Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on Play Games. My name is Lance, and today I look at a brand new game coming to Kickstarter called New Osaka. This is a new game by 3Times Game Studios. It is a 1 to 4 player game that takes roughly 2 to 4 hours to play, and is a competitive game, so each player is working against the other players to have the most points and be the overall winner at the end of the game. In the game itself, this takes place in the future around 2055, and the Kaiju have attacked New Osaka and Tokyo and pretty much destroyed both of those cities. And so the people are trying to rebuild these cities, so that's where the players come in. They are powerful corporations that have come in with money and resources to try to rebuild these different cities and locations, and the corporation that does the best job at this will actually get new contracts and be even more powerful. So that's where you come in. You will choose one of the corporations to take on, and you get to use really cool battle mechs and different mechs to move around the different locations, gathering up precious resources, gaining money, and being able to combat the kaiju that are out attacking the different parts of the cities, gaining victory points along the way, and also constructing new buildings that are going to get you victory points. And based on how well you do this and which formations you will place your buildings in, you may get bonus points at the end of the game for that as well. Now, the ultimate big bad nasty monster is going to be coming out at the end of rounds 8, 11, and 15 as well to challenge the players, and he is really nasty and will get the players victory points. But also, if the player does not defeat him and he's in that player's zone or one of the zones the player has buildings, he's actually going to lower the victory points of those buildings collectively throughout the game. So the players are really going to want to focus on making sure that they protect their cities and investments, and potentially beating him, as he is going to be worth a number of victory points each one of the rounds he comes out. So some highlights for me. First off, I really enjoyed the artwork with this one. It definitely immersed me into the game and made me feel like I was playing Pacific Rim. You have the big mechs and the big nasty kaiju in there battling each other out, so really enjoyed that, and I love the style of the artwork that he went with this one. The other highlight for me, and I think will be interesting for players that enjoy resource gathering games, this one provides a ton of different resources that the players are going to have to manage throughout the game, choosing which ones to go after based on the buildings they're trying to construct and the mechs that they want to upgrade in their arsenal. So some hard decisions for the players, and for players that like to calculate all their moves out, this is definitely one that will provide that for players, as it'll be very important for players to choose which paths they want to go to maximize that potential to get the resources they need and the different supplies to build up their buildings and battle their mechs to come out on top. So as always, if you find these videos helpful, if you like what I do, please consider hitting that like button, subscribe to my channel, as it really does make a big difference, helps me to continue to grow and produce these videos. If you stay updated on all my videos, also consider ringing that bell so you get notifications anytime I release new content. So let's head to the table and I'll show you what this one's all about. One of the first things I want to take a look at are the resources that are included in the game. And there's a whole plethora of these that the players are going to be interacting with throughout the game, gaining raw resources that they'll convert into constructed resources to help them build and upgrade their buildings. They'll also be able to use some of these resources, such as the mechanical parts, to upgrade their different mechs and provide different abilities for them. Each of the monsters will have different resources the players can gain and trade in at very specific locations for different things as well. And the players will also be gaining engineers throughout the game that'll help them with some of this construction and converting of different materials. So one of the challenges to the game is figuring out which materials you're going to need for which projects you want to build, and the best way to approach gaining those resources, whether it is buying them or trying to get them out of one of the resource bags that players will be able to interact with at different buildings in different locations throughout the game. Moving over to the players, each player is going to have a board that will be specific to that player's faction. Each faction will have a name, a special ability or special power, and the number of money that faction will generate. Each faction will have a gauge that will tell them the number of spaces they can move per action, and this can be upgraded throughout the game. And then we have the action gauge. At the beginning of each round, the player is going to roll a 6-sided die, and based on the result they roll is the number of actions they can perform during the round, between 4 to 7 actions. Then each player is also going to have 6 different mechs that are going to be able to do different things throughout the game. Each one of the mechs will have specific buildings or areas that it can visit, and certain things that it can perform, such as the flying motor can go to special function buildings and engineer stations, whereas the Raider fighter can only go to air transport buildings. Each one of these mechs can be upgraded throughout the game by gaining certain resources, and that will give that mech certain powers. The flying motor, construction, and engineering mech can also take an action as one of their visits to try to upgrade and gain additional parts. And if they're able to get 3 of these parts, then that player or that particular mech will unlock a special pair of abilities that they will be able to do for the rest of the game that are pretty powerful. So it's definitely something that the players are going to want to work towards. With the battle mech and the raider fighter, they're going to be your combat mechs, and they are going to be able to fight some of the different monsters, and the battle mech can actually fight up against other players and the players' battle mechs as well. So you're going to have a lot of combat going on there between those guys. As you do different things, you'll have a gauge that'll get you victory points if you're successful against other players and monsters, and you'll also be able to get missiles and things that you can add to your battle mech to help increase their effectiveness. Each of the battle mechs is also going to have their own deck of skill cards that will be able to be played during combats with other players and other monsters that will add a number of bonus victory points, adding additional attack power, and potentially other features that the player will have throughout the game, or throughout that particular combat. Each player will have a central base tile that will be placed out during setup, and the players will also have a number of different tokens. Each player will have a certain number of manager tokens that will be placed out to do different actions throughout each one of the rounds, and if a player ever runs out of manager tokens, then they cannot perform any more actions during that round. So even if the player has additional actions to spend, if they're out of manager tokens, then they are out of their ability to do actions, so that is part of the management of deciding how and when you want to spend those. Each player will have a number of flags that they can use to mark their territories or areas that they control, and then finally they have a number of tokens that they can place out, marking their progression with their mechs or other things, buildings and whatnot as well. There's also 4 different monsters included in the game. 3 of these monsters the players will be able to fight throughout the game, and there'll be different locations on the map that will have these different monsters the players can face. The final big nasty monster, Sababa, is going to come out at the end of turns 8, 11, and 15 and attack the central city, trying to destroy the buildings in there. The players each will place their battle mech in there and start a round of combat with Sababa and try to defeat him. And he is going to get nastier each of those rounds that he comes out, but he will also be worth more victory points if you're able to defeat him. During the game, each of the players can fight the 3 monsters that are out there, challenge them at different locations. The smallest monster is going to be the easiest, rolling a D8, and the biggest monster out there will roll a D12. If you're able to defeat the monster, you're going to receive a number of victory points for that monster and much needed money. And then if you're able to defeat the monster by 4 or more, you're also going to receive a resource of your choice from the options that the monster provides. And if you can defeat the monster by 9 or more, you're going to get 2 resources of your choice. So gaining resources, and each of the monsters will have their own types of resources they'll generate, and these can be traded in at different key locations for very precious resources the players can use. Players are also going to keep track of defeats against the monsters based on how well they do for each of the monsters, and will receive victory points at the end of the game based on how well they do with that. And the last feature I want to go over is the game board, and this is a massive board. So as you guys can see here in the image, it takes up a lot of space. This is just one section of the board that I want to go into. So first off, each of these areas is going to be separated by a white line, and this is going to signify a unit area. And this is going to be important for movement, as each area is considered one space of movement. Now, players are not able to move into the central city areas, and these are the areas where the players are going to be constructing buildings throughout the game. You also have these little areas here, which are the base areas, and this is where the players can place their base token, and that will signify where they're going to start the game at. There's also going to be a number of spots around the map that'll have the images of the monsters with a number on them that'll follow down, and that's the number of times that a monster can be attacked and defeated at that particular location. When this spot reaches the end of the track, then you're not able to fight that monster at that location anymore. Then there's also a number of different buildings out there. We have the engineer stations, the air transport, and the mechanical areas, and the players are going to go there gaining different resources. And at the beginning of the game during setup, you'll roll each die for those areas, and that will denote how many of each of those areas you can pull from for the different resources. So for example here, if we go here, you would be able to pull 4 different engineers from the bag, and then you'll choose one of them to keep and add to your area. as that die has come up with the number 4 on it. Whereas this area here would be a 3, so you pull 3 resources from the bag and choose 1. And some of the areas, such as this one here, only have 1, so it'll be dependent upon how the dice come up, how many resources you can pull from those different areas, trying to get whatever you're looking for. Other areas will have specific resources that you'll trade in, so with this place here, you can trade in 2 metal and a blue engineer to get alloy, or a pink engineer to get steel. And this is going to be important as you're going to try to gather up certain resources to convert to other resources to help you build your buildings, as that is one of the main ways that players are going to get points throughout the game. Players can alternatively also go to different buildings to just purchase resources or try to attempt to purchase a resource, as this building here, you would spend 6 money and then roll your d12. Depending upon the results you come up with, you'll receive that number of hydrogen, which could be anywhere from 0 all the way up to 4 hydrogen. So it's a little bit more of a gamble, but it can pay off from time to time, especially if you really need that resource and you don't have the other resources to convert to that one. So there'll be a lot of different choices the players will have throughout the game. Moving over to the central city, there'll be the different building tiles, and these will be, each player will start with 1, and then throughout the game, once the player completes 1, they'll get to take another one. Each one of these buildings is going to have a number at the bottom, which will help in scoring at the end of the game, as players are going to be trying to get sequences or streaks in these numbers or different things and different layouts of these different city buildings to get points for that as well. Throughout the game, the player will start with the completely unconstructed side, marking that with their token. And then as they construct it and they get different resources, so for example, in order to construct this unconstructed building, we're going to need 3 steel. So there's a couple ways throughout the board that you'll be able to get steel, and this is one of the ways up here. So if our player can get 2 metal and 1 pink engineer, they can convert that to 3 of the steel, which will let them upgrade this building. Once the player gets that, then the building is upgraded. They'll gain 4 points for that, and then they'll flip it over to this side and mark it as they're still working on it. So in order to complete this side, we need 3 chips, so we could come down here and try to purchase the chips, getting lucky on that roll potentially, or you can build the chips, and there's a couple ways of doing that as well. Once the player completes that, then they'll flip their token over to this side, which is the completed building side. They're going to receive 8 points for that, and then the player will get to select a new building from the selection of buildings that are out there. In this way, the player is going to continue building buildings, trying to create different patterns that they'll get victory points for at the end of the game as well. And other players can block areas, so you want to be mindful of what you select and how you set up, because you're not required to put a building next to another building. But if you have an overall goal that you're trying to achieve, other players can mess you up throughout that. So let me take you through a couple of turns to show you how this works. So first off, let's go ahead and bring this building back over to its unconstructed side. And we're trying to gain the resources that are needed for that. So with my player, let's say that I start out with my construction mech. I'm going to bring him out from my base and move him over here. So that is considered 1 action. And so it would pass to the next player to take their turn, and they would do it. And then when it comes back to me, then I can take another action. Since I'm already at this location now, then I can visit different spots in this location, in this area that I'm in, and do different things based on the construction bot. So with this particular bot, I can visit the air transport station and try to get some resources. So this one has a 3 on it. So I will do that first as my first visit. And this is going to, since it's the first person here, I get to flag this location. And then it's only going to cost me 1 manager to use this location. So I'll place my manager there. Then I get to take a number of resources from the bag, again based on the die. So that die lets me pull 3. So I'll pull 3 resources from the bag. I find a green resource, some concrete, and a red resource. So from there I would select one of those to gain, and then I would gain those resources. What I was hoping to get was some metal. So let's take a look at that real quick. Let me find it. So this is the one I was looking for. So let's say that I got that one. So I would gain 2 metal that I would add to my area. So let me pull those out. And we'll just set it here for the time being. And then I also need to, and then these will go back to the bag. So then I also need a pink engineer to complete this. So then I'd have to visit an engineering station. So I need a mech that can do that. So unfortunately, my construction mech cannot do that. If he was able to do one of the other locations, then he could do that as part of the action, as you can visit up to 2 locations at the area you're currently in. But with my construction mech, I can also try to go after the conduits for him, as that is one of those resources, remember, that he is trying to achieve so that he unlocks his additional abilities. So let me try that as my second action. That's going to cost me 1 manager, and then I get to roll my d12. And if I roll an 8 or better, I will gain that resource. And I rolled a 9. So I did get that, and then I will add the conduit to my area as well. So I have 1 out of the 3 that I need. Then it'll go to the next player, and let's say that it comes back to me. Then I'm going to take my flying car out and take it over to this area. So 1, 2, and visit this engineer station here. And it's going to require me, again, I'll flag it and spend 1 manager there. And then I get to pull 3 engineers from the red engineer bag. And again, I'm looking for a pink engineer. So I did get one, so I'm going to go ahead and put him off to the side. And this is a special building, so my flying motor can also visit that as his second action. So that's going to require 1 manager as well, since he's the first person to go there. And I'll spend my 1 pink engineer and 2 metal to generate the 3 steel that I need. At that point, I'm going to go ahead and spend those steel right away to upgrade. So I'll get 4 victory points for that, and then I'm off trying to build chips. So again, I could try to come over here and do that at a later point. So this is one of the main features of the game, like I said, and then the other is going to be that combat. So let me show you that real quick. I'm going to bring my mech out here, and I'm going to go after this guy here. So first off, I'm going to choose one of my skill cards that I want to use, so I'll go ahead and take this one. And then I will select how many missiles I also want to add to this combat. Then I get to roll my d12, and the monster for this one is the big nasty guy, so he's going to roll a d12 as well. So let me roll those first and see what we get. So we have a 9 and a 9, so we're tied there. I added 2 missiles, so that brings me up to 11, and I played the flame missile, which is also going to add 3 to that. So I have beaten him by 5. Not really good, but still enough. So I'm going to gain 1 victory point for that, and I'll gain 5 victory points for defeating him. Then I'll get 6 money as well, and I get a bonus 2 money for the flame missile. From there, then I'm also going to get 1 resource because I beat him by 4 or more. So I get to choose to either have a blood, bone, or computer chip. And so I'll go ahead and take the bone. So I add this to my area. And then I'll move that gauge down, and then this card is going to be discarded along with the missiles that I spent. And that's how combat works. Well, I hope you guys found this video helpful in deciding whether or not you want to back this Kickstarter. If you have any questions or comments, leave those in the comments section below and I'll do my best to answer them, or swing by the Kickstarter's main page and drop any questions you have there. I'm sure the creator would love to hear from you and is more than happy to answer any questions you have. As always, if you find these videos helpful, if you like what I do, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to my channel, as it really does make a big difference, helps me to continue to grow and produce these videos. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.